With the global pandemic happening, 154 million cases and over 3 million deaths worldwide, vaccinations have been at the forefront of discussions in many countries, and the should I is the question many are asking. Vaccinations against life-threatening diseases are one of the greatest public health achievements in history. Millions of premature deaths have been prevented, and countless more children have been saved from disfiguring illnesses. Today, vaccines are becoming a victim of their success. People haven't witnessed these debilitating diseases that vaccines protect us against, leading to complacency toward immunization requirements. But did you know the practice of immunization dates back hundreds of years when monks drank snake venom to gain immunity from their bites? And before the first vaccine was invented, there is a practice called inoculation widely used, when material from an ill person was inhaled by a well person in hopes of gaining immunity that way. Variolation was the specific process of grinding up smallpox scabs and inhaling or rubbing them into open wounds. Smallpox could and did wipe out populations and leave the living severely disfigured. Luckily, in 1796, a man named Edward Jenner inoculated a boy with the cowpox virus, and in response, he developed antibodies that fought off the smallpox virus. So what's the difference between variolation and vaccination? Variolation used viral matter from smallpox patients, while vaccination used cowpox virus, much milder and safer, with the same immunities. And that's how vaccinations began. But how do they work? Vaccines work by inducing the immune system's B cells, the ones that fight bacteria and viruses, to manufacture antibodies against specific molecules called antigens that poke out of a particular virus. They are watered down versions of the disease. Countries have immunizations dependent on localized viruses, and there are currently 28, this is excluding COVID-19, vaccine-preventable diseases worldwide. In fact, in the US alone, there are 14 illnesses that are almost forgotten about, including diphtheria and polio. Before the diphtheria, the D&D tap, vaccine was discovered in the early 1920s, it was the third leading cause of death in children in Europe and an epidemic in several U.S. cities. 5 to 10% of the population would succumb to it, with the case fatality rate rising to 20% in children under 5 and adults over 40. A diphtheria outbreak in 1735 swept through New England, causing 32% of children under 10 to die. The case fatality ratio was almost 40%. If that occurred now, would you rethink the choice of to vaccinate or not? Meanwhile, polio reached epidemic proportions in the early 1900s, at a time when other diseases like diphtheria were declining. Better sanitary conditions meant exposure to polio was delayed until after a child had lost maternal protection and was more vulnerable to the most severe form of the disease. Polio hysteria swept the U.S. until a vaccine was invented in 1955. Throughout history, viruses have emerged and vaccines secured, and throughout history there has been a group of the unsure, those opposed to said vaccinations. What is this anti-vaxxer movement, and why is it growing here in the United States? A variety of factors are at play, including religious and philosophical beliefs, freedom and individualism, misinformation about risk, for example, the internet, and over-perception of risk. This leads us to today and the questions people have about the COVID-19 vaccine, namely, how are they able to produce it so quickly? Knowing that COVID-19 is a coronavirus and knowing coronaviruses are part of a larger family of viruses, most often linked to mild or moderate upper respiratory tract illnesses, like the common cold, is an important step in relinquishing fear of the vaccine. The first one was detected in 1977, and because of this, over 4 decades of research on them and a decade's worth of research on one similar to COVID-19 that's a more common duration for vaccine development to occur. Not only that, but there are currently studies being done on pregnant and nursing moms in which their offspring are gaining antibodies and thus immunity to COVID-19. Are there risks getting vaccinated? Of course, everything medically related has a risk. And although there are treatments now, the side effects are more severe than those of the vaccination. And in order for life to go back to normal, we need the herd immunity worldwide. That's 83% of the population vaccinated. Will you get one?